Ready? We're good to go. All right. Good evening. I'm John Pugh, Township Supervisor. Tracy Olson.
Tracy Olson.
And we have Warren Minsky, Township Manager. So tonight is the first meeting for 2023 for Town Hall meeting. So we'll meet 3 more times throughout the year. It'll be the second month of the quarter. So keep posted on the Township website and also some of the social medias to keep track of what we're doing on some of these Town Hall meetings. What we'd like to do is, if you start off on the table, do you have a copy of the agenda there?
I don't have a copy. It's just
open
forum.
Yeah, okay, so we'll go into the open forum. So what I'll do is I'll start on this side of the room, and as I said earlier, just give your name, street name, and go ahead. So on this side of the room, anyone would like to step up and speak? No? Okay. So now I'll turn to this side of the room. Any takers? You have the opportunity to step up to the microphone and to speak.
All right, I'll start it off. Valerie Schultz on 65 Freeland Court.
Well,
Thanks, John. First of all, I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for having this town hall meeting. I think the last town hall meeting was well received. I think the people felt like they were heard. Not necessarily saying that all of the action items were followed up on, but there were some improvements. Like there were some improvements to the website. You know, people said that they wanted more transparency. I still think we have a long way to go in terms of transparency. One of the things I looked at was the East Brandywine Township website, and I looked at their budget, and their budget is so crystal clear in terms of the detail that it's broken down to. I mean, they even put on there that how much they spent on printer cartridges and all of these various incidentals, so you knew where every single tax dollar went.
yeah.
So I think that would help with some transparency. There's also some other things like, when you guys give a vote for or against or no position, I think having additional transparency, if you guys explain why you're doing that, so it doesn't appear as though you didn't put any thought or effort into it. And then maybe some of the committees, when you don't necessarily go along with the committee's recommendations, like the Planning Commission, then they understand why you didn't go along with their vote and why you didn't listen to it. I think it's important for them to know that their input mattered. If you're asking for all of these skilled, qualified people to be on these committees, I think it is very discouraging to them if you don't take their recommendations into account. So they need to know if you did, essentially. And I think the other thing is, when residents come to you and give their concerns, give an answer, just any answer. If it's, I have to come back to you, I don't know at this time, let me come back to you. I think that's better than just looking at someone and dismissing them and moving on. And even if you want to make it formal and allow people to, submit a formal complaint or concern that you're going to log and follow up on, that's fine too. But just dismissing people makes it seem as though they don't matter. Because at the end of the day, the board is here to serve the people, not rule the people. So while we elected you guys to work on behalf of the residents, we also want to know that you're listening to our feedback. And when people tell you, we don't want to trail behind our development, that needs to be taken into consideration, and you can't just say, nobody ever came and told us this when, you know, we were on video and we're in a public forum that we made those comments. So there has to be some sort of way of formally acknowledging it and getting back to people. And just an overall acknowledgement, I think, is helpful to know that you guys are really taking into account that our tax money is hard-earned tax money, and it has to be used very efficiently. So if you guys are going to give, you know, a huge raise to an employee, there needs to be a justification other than, you know, we were trying to retain somebody, because we need to know that our tax dollars are being put to good use.
Thank you, you had some interesting points.
Okay, perhaps a few points on here. Maybe we could just go down the list before the evening's out, go back and see if we've addressed some of those concerns. So, anyone else that would like to step up?
Charlestown, 49 Windswept Lane. I'm just curious, does anyone follow up with Calvin? Are we keeping that open for the chief of police for Brook Borough? Also along with hers, the budget, I mean, I was looking, there's $250,000 set aside for road work, but only 17 was used, so is that stuff that should have been done that didn't get done, or is that just put that money into the budget to beef up the budget so it looks like we have this much?
Is that that point? Just
On the budget,
yeah, right. Yes.
like when there's the numbers from what was projected to what was actually spent is off by a large number, can we get some kind of explanation for why that was?
I think we had talked about the budget. To have it more, kind of tell a story than just a sheet of numbers, to explain it in a way that sort of makes sense that anybody that's not necessarily someone that's looked at a budget before can pick it up and understand it, make it more
But even if you look at a budget, when it says miscellaneous and there's $20,000, like, miscellaneous from where?
Right, an itemized budget. A lot of people have it itemized.
I mean, it's for stormwater management, was what it was.
It's
on the
general.
road crew, but, so is that projects that we didn't get to last year, or, you know what I mean, like, that kind of stuff?
Thank you, John.
I mean, it's budget for snow removal, okay, it didn't snow at all this year. So, where does that money go to?
Yeah, just said that.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to be in a position right now where we're pretty far ahead, and we've had some years like that where it's only 1 or 2 snowstorms, and then the equipment piles up in storage, and we're running out of room. One thing that's advantageous is that we'll have the supply for next year, as long as we have the room to store it. But if we get hit by a bad year, and what happened to us a few years ago, there's just so much salt and grinders available, and at one point the municipalities were running out, so they're trying to get replenished, but the state has priority over the municipalities and grabs it up first, and then if there's anything left over, then the municipality.
Yeah, try to be below the municipalities, and try to get salt.
So that was something we dealt with a few years ago. And unfortunately, at the time, the winter ended earlier than we expected, so we lucked out and not here. But who knows what next year.
Does that budget roll over, I think is more what she's saying, whatever isn't used this year, does that stay in the coffer for next year?
Yes. Yeah. And the one good thing is that the person that's been running taking care of our roads, and that's been his career, and he's been managing, the snow removal, doing an excellent job. In fact, that's one thing that heard positive from people over the years. You know, there was a time in Huntingburg Township, and I'm going back several years ago, if it snowed, don't even bother going out to try to get to work because the roads weren't taken care of. But nowadays, you know, before the snow has even hit, you see the trucks are already out there. And they have a pretty well managed schedule there. As soon as the snow starts piling up again, you see another plow coming through. Okay. Anyone else would like to open up with questions? Yes, sir.
Jerome Bill, 2297 Bishop Pike. Our plant, whenever we hire, say, a plant manager, we actually have him or her sign on certain criteria and a length of time before anything is talked about as far as vacation, money, raises, and everything like that. What is the situation here when you sign a warrant on it? And what's your outline?
Well, we did have a meeting with the Board of Supervisors met, and there was a discussion on what we can provide. And we did negotiate in good faith, and that was what was put into the budget. Some of the things that we discussed that we are providing a vehicle for transportation, work availability for working from home, so you figured education and all that, that you're adding some additional benefit to the position.
What we the taxpayers are wondering, we're out in the regular work area, we never get any type of raises like that, no matter how much education we have. That's a big sticking point with the township right now. How are you gonna afford to pay that? That's something where everybody's gonna go with this. That's what we're questioning now.
As I flip over any more things that we'd like to discuss. For the people that just joined, what we're doing is we're opening up the floor for an opportunity to speak. I would hope that we have a chance for everybody in the room to a chance to speak tonight before you leave. And, yeah. Yes, thank you. Remind me. Warren, do we have?
You have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak on this side of the room?
I have a question.
Go right ahead. If you give me an
I
interest.
scared, okay.
Yeah.
I'm Marge Williams, City Flash Paper. Just have a question about, there was a discussion in a meeting I attended a few weeks ago about the variances and approving that. If one utilizes land outside of their own property, what are the guidelines from the township, or what consequences are there? Are there citations or notices or penalties? And I would hate to think that someone innocently in their residence or on a property is liable or has insurance issues because they weren't aware.
All right. I'll just take that at the moment. And then
Just a general matter.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
all right.
John, could
Yes,
you
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was a few minutes tardy. Could you just turn to page 1 again so I
Sure.
can see
Yeah.
what you had on page 1?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And I don't know how clear it'll come out in the video, but if you go to YouTube, Honeyburg Fresh Air, you'll be able to see the recording of this meeting. This is June. Yeah, but it's page 3.
John, is the EAC on page 1?
No, it's not.
Okay, could you just add that to the
I
bottom of
will.
the list? Thanks so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just speak back off of her?
Yes, go ahead.
On the variances, I mean, it seems like you guys just sit up there and go, yay or nay. I mean, if we have the rules in place for a piece of property, what is the criteria to give them a variance other than
It's a little more involved than just a reaction. I mean, we do have the opportunity to discuss the questions that have come to the board at the business meeting a week prior. And that's something I started a few years ago. It used to be that on a Friday, we'd get a package at 5 o'clock, and, you know, it'd be like way high, and you would just have to go through sorting through that. And hopefully the Board of Supervisors could be prepared when they attended the meeting the following week. So with the workshop, that's one opportunity to discuss what's coming up. But the steps before that, the variance request, you go into a planning commission, and what we are asked at times.
I know what the steps are, I'm saying the requirements to give the variance, because there's a set of rules for that too,
Mhm.
but it doesn't seem like that's necessarily followed.
Okay.
There should be a hardship.
There should be
Yes.
a hardship.
That's what I'm saying, like,
It
it's
should not
right
be
in the
granted if there's
rules
not
that
hardship.
it should be a financial hardship, it's not.
A hardship would be as if the township rezoned your property and now you're
Can't fit in.
over the impervious or something like that.
Yeah.
That's a hardship, that somebody else imposed that was not your.
But because I wanna make more money off my property isn't necessarily the hardship that should allow
No.
a variance.
But that's where, like, the planning commission usually gives explanations as to why they're rejecting or accepting, but I think we're not hearing it from the board, and I think that would be helpful if the board would explain why.
Well, Mike's also saying, telling you another thing, you know, I would approve it, you know, or the planning commission saying, oh, no, we're not approving this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I believe that, to your point, is that years ago when I came to the meeting, I'd be sitting here and I would say, what's going on? You would be going down the list, boom, boom, boom. And so if you notice in the meetings, I've often turned to the township engineers, Mr. Mike, can you explain, you know, what this request is about? Or if there's someone from the planning commission in the audience, they may be able to step in and provide some background. So what I'm hearing is that it's not being done consistently.
Now, I understand that, there was something with the, township vehicle being down, not working all the time. Did we get another vehicle?
The vehicle that's been sitting in the lot.
Oh, I just know that the old car that you guys were talking about one time and said that you're gonna have to get another vehicle because that one's like on its last leg.
Yeah.
And so you guys got another vehicle.
Yeah, they're still holding on to that old sedan. I think it's like 16 years old at this point. Probably spent a little time in the parking lot.
And that's just used for
It's,
township business? Is it used for personal business? Is it used for, oh, I'm going to the bar and come back?
from my understanding that the use of that vehicle was primarily to the post office. And that was one of the administrators was using it. I had suggested using that for a zoning, to have a part-time zoning officer pull up that car at a construction site, let's see, Hunterbrook Township, and it's, the concept of on-site enforcement, and somebody will see them and all of a sudden they'll start behaving, and, but that vehicle, every time I came in here, it was always sitting there in the lot. I don't even know what kind of mileage is on it. Anyway, all right, so, I don't know if you want to, I'll just put down vehicles.
This vehicle use policy.
That came out with $1 there. Okay. Let me try it. Anyone on Zoom? Welcome. Any questions that you'd like to raise? For your silence here. All right. Nobody responding? Could anyone on Zoom just say hello so we know that you're there? There we go.
Hello.
Hi, Stacy. Welcome. So if you're just listening in, fine. We just want to make sure that you have an opportunity to speak. All right. So some of the things, I'll start with Tracy. Do you want to add anything to the list that we just heard?
I thought that we're here to get input from the residents.
Yes. I was wondering if there's anything that you would like to add. No? Okay. The only thing that I would say that I've been hearing consistently is on the communication channel. We have a newsletter, we have a website, we do have a presence on Facebook. I don't think it's been working very effectively over the years. Most of the content on the Facebook page is just copying and pulling the announcements from the website and putting it on Facebook. We've never had a consistent schedule of publication for the newsletter, the paper copy, and that was done for two reasons. Some of the older residents said that they wanted paper copies, they were more comfortable with that. They go to a website, and also the Amish community, they often will rely on paper, and, though some of them I see got up-to-date iPhones.
Yeah.
She originally said that was coming out in November, and then she said January, and I haven't got one.
I have not seen one in my mailbox either, so I'll just put that on the list. So, I wonder if I could ask you the time frame that we have on the new website that we are looking to bring in a third party to help us put together, and then we'll also have a maintenance contract with that firm.
Correct, so they're looking at handing it over in the next 5 days, however, they're doing a few changes to see if we like version A versus
Okay,
version B.
when you said 5 days, what are they handing over?
So they're gonna be handing over a live website in about 5 days.
Yeah.
Which won't be live yet. I mean, it'll be live on a web browser, but it won't be PlanBrookTownship.com. And at that point, we'll seek the input of the supervisors and work with the company, which is Civic Plus, to put the information that we like, where it should belong on the website. Then for the 1 month, there'll be basic training and advanced training. And they're also going to be hosting our domain for us. And then they're looking at turning it over live somewhere in March 20th. So that would become the new PlanBrookTownship.com webpage if all goes according to plan.
Would we have the opportunity to show something prior to that March 20th date?
There will be a link that will take you to a website. If the board likes to share it to the public, you can do that.
Yeah, but it's not going to be an official site at that point.
Correct, it's a web link that's not attached to our official township website, so if the board wishes to put that out for the community to take a look at, it's just a link. Yeah, I'll let you share that.
Sean, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
So, have you guys thought about doing an impact analysis, especially of the DR Horton development, considering the massive size? I know that the sewer treatment plant is already struggling and at capacity as it is. And when Chestnut Bridge went in, all of us saw our bills go up to accommodate that development. My question is, and I know other townships have done this, they've passed on the cost of infrastructure upgrades onto the developer, especially if it's one that's going to cause an impact like DR Horton. Have you guys planned to do an impact assessment, and, is that something you would consider passing on those costs to them?
I think it's a good idea. The process that we go through right now, once they submit a plan, we'll get this on the property yet. But then there's different government agencies that are involved with this. And I think near the end is when you get the Corps of Engineers. Government Corps of Engineers, they're the one that pretty much supposedly doing this thorough job of making sure that everything is being looked at, and they provide us with a report. And I guess at that point, if there's problems areas, then we'd have to take it up with the developer.
That's pretty far down the line, isn't it?
Yes, it
And
is.
I think she's more talking about the impact on the schools, the impact on
Well, it's sewer too, though.
sewer,
Sewer's
water,
everything.
I'm saying infrastructure, not so
Yeah.
much the wetlands.
And not only that, but our lives.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think there's too many developments going in, and it's risking our lives when we get out on that road. And I'm sorry, but if one of my family, you knowingly knew that this is unsafe, and you allowed them to put this development in, and one of my family members and loved ones get killed, I'm coming after y'all. I'm gonna be straightforward, because you knew it was unsafe.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, it says here, the Pennsylvania State Constitution, that is a good talking point, in my opinion, okay, that the people have a right to clean air, pure water, and the preservation of natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment. Pennsylvania's natural resources are the common property of all the people, including generations yet to come. As trustees of these resources, the Commonwealth shall conserve and maintain them for the benefit for all the people. So that includes my grandkids, I ain't even here yet. I don't know about them, but, you know. But, and then you put this development here, this development here, this development here, this development here. Then you get thousands of people,
Well, if you look at
thousands.
Brook Township, it's, most of the development is concentrated in this area here. Sometimes we still refer to it as the Rockland Station area when we had the temporary neighborhood development. So, years ago, the borough and the township, I'm talking the 1990s, they had a combined comp plan, and they would look at, you know, what the future growth and where we could contain the growth and so forth. So then when the update was done in 2005 or so, the municipality is part of the way, they didn't get involved in that. In 2015, we came back again, working together on that combined effort. But there's some relief here, where some of the development was put over here to relieve some of the stress of the development. And as you see, that there's some areas here that, for instance, this area we used to call Tavis Drag down Chestnut Ridge. That's been planned for several years. If it wasn't for the housing bubble burst in 2008, we may have seen these homes built sooner. But it gave us, from 2008 for about 6 to 8 years or so, things were quiet, and the demand wasn't there. Recently, and since the pandemic has ended, all of a sudden these requests that are coming through, we've got one over here. I think we used to refer to it as Honeybrook Estates. I forget what they call that one now. And
Sweetwater,
sorry,
No,
that
it's down by the golf course.
what is the name of that one?
Sweetwater.
I think it is Sweetwater.
Sweetwater. That's it. I can never
Yeah,
never
that's
picture
started in
Sweetwater with this one.
2006.
Yeah, Sweetwater is what that was called.
John, who made the decision to change the saldo requirements that allowed, because when I was told before my development went in, like 25 years ago, you used to have a 2-acre plot. For my development, it went down to a half an acre.
Yeah.
And now for Chestnut Ridge, it's like a 1/10 of an acre. I mean, it's kind of like what the planning commission said, you know, at the last meeting. We're now getting to the point where these residents, if they want to put a shed on their property, they have to submit a variance. Like, that's what's ruining. I mean, I realize people can sell their property, you can't stop that. But you're allowing them to pack in so densely that you guys are gonna have a hard time managing it. Because you're gonna be flooded with requests of people saying, I need a variance because I can't do anything on my property. And people are gonna get on each other's nerves, there's gonna be issues with dogs and people going over the property lines, you know.
There's a raccoon in my yard.
Yeah, I mean, I love when people look at every animal's rabid that goes in their backyard. So, I mean, you're creating a situation where you're gonna have a lot of stress and chaos on the system by changing those building requirements, and I don't understand why that was done.
There's a, I guess, kind of goes into the market too, because I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Personally, myself, the more area, the better. But I think also, as we move into the future, we got to look at the newer generation. The newer generation don't want bigger yards. They want smaller stuff to maintain. They want easier stuff to maintain. So, well, I'm not saying don't come to Honeybrook or come to Honeybrook. All I'm saying is it's a real life situation that we have to deal with. So protecting what we can protect and how we can protect is one issue. The second issue is you have an upcoming market and generation that wants something different than us older generation.
Yeah.
And then the third issue is maybe some explanation could be brought into these type of meetings is the, I guess, grants and requirements of fair housing and what's required of the townships or counties or states to allow certain buildings in your developmental plan or 10-year plan, et cetera, et cetera.
So that's part of our comp plan, and to your point, is that the state requires that we do project how we're going to accommodate the growth in the state.
And if you don't, I'm sorry, if you don't follow what the state wants you to do, then what does that mean to the individual municipalities, and what's the repercussions of not following these?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the answer to what penalties are incurred. I believe part of the review of the comp plan, if we're not, providing those numbers, then it would get rejected by the county and say, you have to accommodate, a certain percentage. But the reason I put this date up here, I think this is the correct date, November 22nd, and the significance of that, 22, not 23, is because we ended up hitting a number, 8 billion. That's how many people got in the planet now. And it's just, So we don't have the 8 billion, fortunately, in the United States, but our numbers are starting to increase significantly as well. I remember one person saying to me, where are all these people coming from? And, this is not a new situation. I grew up in New Jersey. We were in the center of the county where we had some elements. But if you're closer to the coast on the east side of the county of Ocean County, it was packed. Then a few years ago, a friend of mine bought a home in Jackson, which was out west, which was like, Honeybrook in these areas. He said he couldn't find a home for less than $300,000. And that was 20 years ago, because it's just urban sprawl just kept pushing out west. And then one good thing that New Jersey did in 1980, they ended up, they took a red line, circled around the Pine Barrens, and said, hands off. It caused a lot of politicians to get voted out of office for doing that. But what they did was to protect the largest aquifer on the East Coast, knowing that by 2050, that's going to be vital. And they're still strongly enforcing it. There's no development in that area. The Pine Barrens are flourishing, and that's one instance where you got cooperation across the state that came from the governor. But in Chester County, one of the things that I had Congressman Brian Costello say to me that we have, he says, John, you put together one of the best land preservation plans, because I was on that plan, that land preservation for 6 years, and we targeted what farms preservation that we felt were necessary. That we didn't say that every acre of farmland was going to get protected. There was a set of priorities that they had to meet in order to get those conservation easements that we purchased. That's what you tax dollars have been doing for 17 years now. So.
And that's great with the farming, but what about like the wetlands, enforcement drainage lines, other open land besides farming, that we can preserve?
Well, when we first wrote the plan in 2006, the focus was entirely on farmland protection, and that's pretty much what it was presented as. In 2013, the state legislature said you can use open space tax money for parks, so they expanded the use of it. But another thing is that subsequent updates of that land preservation document, there were things added into that document I've called out. For one thing, the original document never said to include woodlands. You know, there were other programs to fund that. We had someone came in with a large acreage of woodlands, and we said we couldn't help him there, but gave him, you know, the contact in Chester County to preserve that area. And now it's part of our land preservation open space, so it's been expanding, that program's been expanding.
But John, the wording for that referendum was actually for open space. It did not specify that it was only for farmland.
But in 2008 or 2005, this was, December of 2005, open space did not include parks. That was subsequent to it. So the definition of open space at the time was for farmland, for natural resources and things like that. So,
Which wetlands are natural resources?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. But, yeah.
Can I get back to what Charlie was saying
Go ahead.
about the, you know, like the, used to be 2 acres and stuff?
Yes.
So the reason why that's different is because most developments used to be done under conventional developments, which means every lot has its own space. And when all the stormwater requirements came through for the state, they started wanting to have, not every house would have to have a facility then. So they came up with the open space option, so that they cluster the houses close together, and then the stormwater management is used by everybody on the open space.
So
So that's why that's what
But-
changed.
But they
So-
don't need to lower the plots for the homes down so low. that
But
they have-
under the open space, the point of having the open space was that they would have the houses clustered close together so that the rest of the land was open.
I know,
So,
but
But-
it's just the amount that they shrunk it down to was more of
Hey,
a.
I'm not disagreeing with you. trust me.
I understand.
Are we forced to follow that?
No, the developer comes in with the option, he can do a conventional development or he can do an open space option.
And we
And
don't,
everybody's
We can't
doing
direct
the
that.
open space option.
No,
That's what
it's
they
when
all
they
do
change
now.
the cluster, when they change it from a half acre down to a third or whatever they are.
Well, part of that was afforded to the developer is to go to a farmer and buy some of the development rights. So if you had 100 acres, he could sell off some of the development rights for some of those acres. So that is what we refer to as the sending area, and to a receiving area where you have development in place. So they can, by purchasing those development rights, they can add additional housing beyond what was currently allowed.
Which the pages track that TDRs.
So just to, so I understand correctly, so, what you're saying is if there's, say, 50-acre development and the 50 acres is approved, in theory, a developer could come in and say, you're allowed to build 50 houses, let's just say. If that's approved.
If it's a.
I'm just assuming a lot of this, but I'm just making sure that I understand what you're saying. So 50 acres, it's approved for development, it's approved for 50 houses. I can put 50 houses like this and have this big open space, or I can put 50 houses all nicely. Again, all other things help, right, the land and all that stuff, but
So if you look at our
and you're
ordinance,
still following codes and et cetera. But it's like kind of more white skin cat, so to speak, correct? Okay. I just
you
want to
have
make
to
sure.
look, you have to look at what your open space option allows for.
I mean,
So-
and that's what I said, I understand there's a lot of, I'm just trying to make it in
I'm
the
just saying,
simplest
that's
form
why
is
most
that.
developers do an open space option, because years ago, you didn't have to provide stormwater management.
Right.
And then when stormwater management got handed down by the state, the township has to adopt the stormwater
That
ordinances.
becomes such a big
Which
issue.
becomes now, a developer has to put a stormwater facility on each individual lot. So it's easier, shall I say.
So it always makes them want to
What makes them want to do
have a
that
big area
because,
that they can some open space, it's water. And plus, I think, like I said before, like I just see with the market, I mean, people don't want to come home and mow 2 acres of a space and fence it and.
But in my
Even-
opinion, that should not, even if it's a postage size lot, they should take some of the impervious in the township ordinance should allow this. That some of that open space impervious can be added to each individual lot so that you don't need a variance for a deck or a shed or something. And that's, I just don't, I do not like, and I, when that ordinance was going on, I had an argument with Brady Mine Conservancy about it, because I do not agree with it. I do not agree, because you're putting the resident in a position that they shouldn't be in, and they don't know to ask.
Right.
They don't know to
You
ask
should
until
have
they,
assumed
when they
you can have
figure
a
it
shed.
out, is when they're going to apply for a permit, and they're denied. And that's wrong. And DR Horton coming in with 83 variances ticks me off. That's ridiculous. And if they can, okay, so our code changed, that's great, then withdraw your application and submit it under the new code. But you know, there must be something that they can't meet, or they would have done that already. So, you know, I don't agree with putting residents in a position that, number one, they don't understand and don't know until it's too late. That's wrong. I don't.
They're being set up to fail.
Thank you, yes. And, you know, the board wants to remain neutral, that's up to them. But the zoning hearing board is where everybody should be going. Everybody should be going to that DR board and zoning hearing board and speaking that you do not agree with that.
We have even.
DR board, okay, that's a special exception and that's something totally different than a variance. Ryan Hooms is going to the zoning hearing board for a variance, not a special exception. You have to understand that a special exception is something that's permitted, and you're gonna have a long list of why you cannot approve or deny that application. So that's why the zoning hearing board gave them permission.
But the
Because
10
if they wouldn't have, the township would be sued.
Are we talking about
That's-
Horton or Raleigh?
Okay, well, we're talking about two different things. Because DR Horton came in for the special exception for townhouses. Ryan Homes is coming in for a variance for 83 lots.
And I don't remember what.
So you all went to the special exception. That's different than a variance, because they don't have a hardship.
Right.
Their hardship is their product has changed because the market changed. That's not a hardship.
Now, what did the board decide on that?
Well, they didn't, they don't decide. The zoning hearing board decides.
But I mean,
They haven't had the
Yeah,
hearing.
But my question is, if you guys don't know position, then that, it seems to me that that puts the zoning board in a difficult position, because you haven't taken a position either way.
Most board of supervisors will take a no position on most applications that come in, and they let the zoning hearing board do what they're supposed to do. So
Then why-
most
Then why
applications,
even go through the,
It's procedural.
it's a procedural thing that you have to do. So most board of supervisors will take a no position and let the zoning hearing board do what they're supposed to do.
so then why even go through your process? I mean, do they take what you guys say in
You
consideration?
can always give your position, but that's not supposed to be how they decide. They're supposed to make their own decision based on the solicitor's recommendation to them.
So the 2 meetings that
Zoning
we
hearing board
had
has a
before
different
this one were
solicitor.
totally useless.
No, it's not, because you're talking to the community, and everybody's hearing that, and that's great. It's, unfortunately, when you get to the red tape and this type of stuff, sometimes it takes many, and processes, and we just need to stay together and be one team, moving together, and not fight each other, because that's the process, it's government, it's what it is. It's not gonna change like that, and it's not gonna change by one statement, somebody making one statement. It's continuously fight, because these guys got big money, they got the power, they got the resources, and we're just little people in here.
Well, it is annoying though, I'll be honest, when I hear that the township consultants are saying, oh, well, you know, it really isn't, it's backing up to open space, it really isn't bothering anybody. That annoys me. No, that pisses me off, actually, because that's not right. I don't care if it opens up the open space or it doesn't. At the end of the day, a variance is a variance, and people are gonna need it to do things on their property.
Well, that was
one I said with the variance requirements, like, just because it opens up the back open space, that doesn't fall into the requirements at all. It shouldn't even be brought up. It's
But that's where it's the zoning hearing board.
I understand that, but that's what I'm saying. Are they following it by looking at it and not just looking and going, well, oh, so it's 20, or it's 19 and 3/4 acres. You're supposed to have 10 acres, but we'll let them go with 9 and 3/4 to have 2 separate farms. But then the next person comes in and asks for something, and then they
That's
say
what I
no.
said, that are we setting a precedence for the future?
That's what I said.
Yeah, yeah.
From a personal standpoint, I moved here in 2003 in neighborhood Overbrook Drive, and it took us a good 18 months just to get the mail delivered to us, and it took several months just to get on the GPS, and it was, so that's when I started coming to township meetings, and one day I just went to the postmaster on a Saturday morning, explained the situation. She said, your mail will be delivered Monday morning to your house. And I was like, that's all it took. Because all this time I had been hearing, well, it takes this, it takes this process, the whole bit, and we really, listening to it and saying, oh, okay. And, so, to the credit of, a few years later, when we had Village Green, I thought that a lot of this stuff was, would be avoided because we had learned from Evergreen, Ridge, Hillbrook, and the other developments. The residents of Village Green have been fighting for 8 years, maybe?
Nine.
Yeah. So even now, we just had a discussion to find out what remains because, on my calendar shows final inspection should be 2 years ago. And that's not gonna, here it is,
But the
2023.
frightening thing is, if you can't get that development under control,
Yeah.
Dear Horton is gonna destroy this community,
Yes.
and you guys are gonna sit back and watch it happen. Unless you start to take a strong stand, start to be proactive, and be prepared for them to come in and do the crappiest job possible.
One thing that works in our favor is to work with other municipalities. We have that option, but it's not being fully utilized. I would say
And
utilized,
what-
and that's the COG. I have a working relationship with West Brandywine, Huntingburg Borough, and all that. So 5 municipalities, we got together, we presented our situation on 322, we call it a 322 task force, presented to the Chester County Commissioners and said, this is what we currently have. Now, developments in Huntingburg Township, West Brandywine, East Brandywine, and Calhoun Township, I thought traffic was bad in New York City. There's times when it's taken me, nearly a half hour just to go that last mile just to get onto the bypass.
Yes.
That's on a good day.
But I think the Village Green situation, did that come out of like inspections not being followed? How did that get to that point that the builders were able to complete and walk away?
Well, they've been doing that for years.
I know, but then you guys need to say.
No, I'm not saying this is the
"We did
chiefs.
it."
Unfortunately, it's money, determines a lot of things, especially when it comes to residential development.
Yeah, but you're talking about a 10-dot road that the township has no jurisdiction.
No, but we bring to the
So the
attention.
traffic
Yeah.
is, the builders have to get a highway occupancy permit from PennDOT.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that are issuing it. Township has no say in it.
We just did, our presentation said, we had a study that was done in 2009. So we're presenting in 2018 saying, here's a follow-up. So we didn't get much reaction in the first round, so we thought we might get some attention to the next round. One of the things that we discussed is to have a third lane right down the middle of the road from the Lancaster County border all the way to bypass. Of course, that's impossible going to the borough. You can't do that. But for emergency vehicles, for instance, for us, we have police coming from Emeryville. Sometimes they're stuck in traffic. And that's one of the things that we have to, it's just one thing after another. We have a larger number of people commuting from Huntingburg Township to Exton, Prussia, and all that. It's getting to a point that, I would leave at 5:30 in the morning just to hope I could get to work within a reasonable period of time. I went through that in New Jersey. I used to take a bus at 5:40 in the morning and come home at 7:10 at night. And you can't live, spend 3 hours of your day commuting, you know.
But PennDOT told me that the request starts at the township level for like these traffic lights.
Yeah.
And that the township has to actually pay for it.
Yeah.
It's like, what is it, 300,000? I mean, it's.
I don't know what the money is,
it's
but I had conversations with Tim Hennessy, and then his last job was the chairman of the Transportation Committee. And I had discussions with him on the Icedale, Beaver Dam, Burdell intersection. Okay? The thing is, we have the opportunity as supervisors to really get, learn best practices, and purposely brought this in. So in these magazines, and there's also the digital copy, in fact, there's one of them here, there was a situation in one of the municipalities where they had an old country road, and years ago, when these old country roads, they come up to a tree and they go around it. Well, the shape of some of these roads, the way that we kind of zigzag, that's because 150 years ago, but the tree's been gone, and in the case of this one intersection, why not just straighten it out, move the road over to higher ground, because it goes down into the lower, and that's just, it's going to cost money, but that's where, when we get on the list of projects, and if we cooperate, if we have the opportunity to work with the other municipalities, then, we can get grant money, and it usually works favorably. The state looks favorably when the municipalities are working together.
Yeah, but you know what, that shouldn't come from taxpayers for grant money, that should come from developers who are coming in and causing the traffic to accumulate like that. And PennDOT's even said that, yes, there are grants available,
Right.
but that's taxpayer money that's giving those grants, it's still coming out of our pockets.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, the developers are making a crap ton of money, make them pay for it.
Mhm. Yeah. Well,
Well, sometimes they will have to do that and make improvements to the road, like Sweetwater just had to improve those 2 turning lanes. Because that was part of them getting their highway occupancy permit. So they'll come out and there's a traffic study done saying like, how much
Yeah, put in a
traffic, trips
50-foot
per blah, blah,
turn.
blah, blah.
That's what
So
they're-
that's how they determine what needs to be done to the road when a development comes in.
Well, getting back to my example in New Jersey, it used to be minimum lot was 80 by 100. It's now 40 by 100. It's like any available lot, they're squeezing houses in. And, you barely have enough room to pull up a car out to the, you couldn't pull a car along the side of the house. That's how bad it's getting.
Right.
Yeah. And this was in town when I was a kid. We had dirt roads, we went to the mail, post office for mail. Now it's wall to wall to the city. And it's-
That road used to be a dirt road, no houses back there, and there used to be one spot that you could go park in. I remember that as a teenager, now it's all filled up.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, where's your parking at?
Well, unfortunately, we knew this was coming for years. It was just slow down and eased for a little bit. We sat back and said, okay, maybe, but eventually the investors come in, and what I see with this D.R. Horton, they've got a group of investors, and they're going to go back to their investors and say, we can maximize this piece of property and squeeze in all these houses, and this will generate more money. It's not a guarantee. That's where they encourage their investors to put the money into it. But like we said, they're going to have to go through, environmental protection, the DEP.
They're not going to be able to put all those houses in.
No,
They've
I
got
just
to
said-
come in with a compliant plan yet.
Yes.
So
Well, I
they're
just said,
going to lose out.
that's where they're going back to the investors saying, look, we can put all this stuff here. But that's before they have to go through all the processes. They submit a plan, then that plan gets reviewed, by the state and by PennDOT. I don't know how some of these changes, if you look at down in East Brandywine, just north of Guthriesville, that's a mess already. Apple Cross, and they built across the street from it.
Yeah.
And that's got, remember that little house there and the little meadow there? That's now retention, that's basement there too.
My
Yeah.
girlfriend lived there
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah. So,
But I mean.
what can we do? What can we do is
What we
real
can do
well.
is, go walk the property.
Yeah.
Get it on your feet and actually feel it, see it. You know what I mean? And not see it by like.
And there's that ordinance that you have you to get independent, I mean, I think Adam did a fantastic job of explaining why there's a concern with the wetlands assessment that they submitted. So that's enough justification to ask for an independent assessment.
That's that one on the,
And Hutchinson,
yeah.
and I follow up with other people from National Land Trust saying, just let us know.
So John, has there been a follow-up with Ann Hutchinson from the Land Trust?
I told her, I don't have, step to go forward yet. I said, it's not, yes, it's not no, but at the moment,
If she offers her free services, what does the step forward need to be? Is it a phone call to the property owner? Is it, what's that
well,
next step? What's the
I
whole-
think there's a situation where they have to get permission to walk the property, but what she's offering to do is to look at the ordinances. There's a set of,
She said she'd walk the property too.
well, yeah, but, to the point, I don't think we could just throw a group of 20 people walking that
Oh,
property.
I'm not saying
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
a group of engineers, Ann and Richard from the National Trust said they would walk it. What's the next step? Do we call them? What's the Board of Supervisors' next step? When will that happen? Because we've been talking about the EAC since November, and it's been
Right.
tabled. So here we are, it's February. You're telling me about a newsletter that's going to come out. It's still not out. So is it the same thing with the EAC? Like, people are offering free services to help us.
And
And we have the ordinances.
to the credit to the community, we've had some people who have been, working for years, and they don't get paid anything for anything. Melissa, for example, she was on the Gold County Task Force, a Community Relations Task Force. She was on the comp plan, and working as a
Praise God,
member of the
that's
Planning Commission.
amazing for our
you know,
community. So what's our next step then?
Yes. My recommendation is let's take a look, be proactive. I went on the Environmental Protection Agency website, and you're able to use the GPS system, just like what we heard Adam talk about the other day. And I was able to generate reports. So some of the statistics that was given me is like air cancer risk, and we're falling just slightly below the state and the Pennsylvania and the national average. So that's a one good sign. Then I compared it to another section of the township, and one of the things that showed up was proximity to a super fund. Well, in the southeast section, the Rockland Station area, it's a certain number. It's a higher number north of that because we do have a super fund site. I don't know if you're aware of that on Welsh Mountain. And for years ago, for years there was a 5-year study that would be done. And I remember back in 2008, I think it was, I reached out to the township and I said, I found this on EPA site. It's about us. Could you post it on the website? So then 5 years later, I said, could you post it again? So that's like, 2013. I haven't found, I don't know if that was the last report, but that information's out there. It's just a matter of having someone to be able to retrieve that stuff. And
Can you circle back to her question?
Yeah.
Because I think you kind of got off on a tangent.
yes,
What do you guys need to do? Do you need to vote on whether or not you're going to walk that property? Is that
Well-
essentially what needs to happen?
first I think we just got to get, well, if we haven't got movement on the EAC, if we're going to go that direction, pull in the natural lands, certainly we'd have to, contact the owner of the property, say, we would let have permission to go there. But before we call in Ann or any of her assistants, we have to make sure that we're going forward and not keep them hanging.
So essentially you need to vote on it to figure out what the next step is.
So
I would bet that the landowner ain't gonna volunteer and say, go ahead.
Yeah.
If there's money involved, they're gonna make a lot of money off it,
Yeah.
so.
But there's an
You're-
ordinance.
You can't force me to bring anyone on my land, so.
There's an ordinance that allows them to do that.
What is that?
When the township modified the zoning, and, yeah, there's a set of ordinances called the growing greener. We haven't quite adopted that whole set of growing greener, but what Ann spoke to me about that, saying that we do have some good ordinances as far as the environmental issues that we didn't have 10, 12 years ago. So we took a step in the right direction, but then again, it comes down to enforcement.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, going back to the builder being 2 years behind, what are the enforcements
Yeah.
that the township has, and if you don't have any in place, what do you need to start working on to put it in place, so that we're not caught in this, when they're finishing up Chestnut Ridge, when they're finishing up any of these other developments?
It's like when the bulldozers come in, and then we start getting reports.
Unless you work the land, you can't get it back.
Yes.
So you have no recourse to force them to do the final?
No, there's all these different steps that have to be taken. You know, when I reached out to Ann, it was just to say,
I'm off the
yeah,
law.
why not take a look ahead
Are
of
you
time?
talking about Village Green?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm back to the village
Oh,
green.
you're talking about Village Green?
How do we
So-
get to where you're doing the final inspection? If you're 2 years behind, what are the recourse for the township?
He's not 2 years behind, the builder's.
Well, I'm
2 years
saying,
behind.
if you're 2 years behind getting your approvals done, what are the
No, he's
townships?
approved, he has his approvals, he has a punch list of things that he needs to do to complete to turn the property over to the HOA. And
Okay,
he has not completed.
well, that's what I'm
several
saying, what
buildings.
is the township's role in having to be able to put pressure on him to have to finish up?
They
and not
have.
leave us out?
Like writing a letter to the developer and saying, you know, these are the different things, and have him not respond back to me.
No, I'm not saying
No, no,
you're
no,
not doing
yeah,
anything,
yeah, no,
I'm
no,
saying,
yeah.
what do you have to put in place so that this doesn't happen down the road?
Yeah, because we know there's been numerous missed deadlines. And,
So then they don't get their money, right?
well, you know, when we have, comes up, what happens, there's a portion of the money that's released, you know, the escrow money, because they've proven, they've had the inspection of that particular phase or that particular piece of work. On one occasion, when it came to some of the vegetation and stuff, I don't know if it was just trees or something like that, and I said, no, I vote against that, because I know from past experience, in fact, I might even have it with me tonight, the Village Green Phase 3 plan, and it shows the instructions of how to plant the trees. So I went out there to the property, the residents showed me, and it didn't follow what was on the plan.
Well, that's because the township came out and inspected and said the trees were planted.
Yeah.
That was it.
So how
Although they're
many,
put out of the ground and they're all dying, but they were planted, so it's given their escrow manufacturers. Don't even get me started.
yes.
Don't even get me started. Don't even.
But I think that, I mean, we've all had experiences with the
Yeah.
inspections
Yeah.
not being really complete. I mean, I had probably $20,000 worth of improvements I had to make in my home because
Yeah.
the work that the builder did was bad. So, I mean, that's what scares me. If we've had this experience with other builders who aren't so bad,
Yeah.
Dear Morgan's gonna walk right all over this township, and you guys are gonna be left handing the bag and the homeowners, and it's gonna be a mess.
Yes. I don't doubt that.
So, I mean, we need to make sure these inspections, like,
Mhm.
We need to get one game ahead of them.
Whatever, goes to Downingtown, that DR Warden development, go ahead.
Yeah.
I dare you to get
It's
out
not
of
just
your
the warden.
That's a DR Warden.
It's
No,
not, it's not, it's
That's not
just
just
the
that.
no.
That,
Well,
to do
we
this.
saw what happened in Brook.
Having a good building inspector is very hard to find,
Yeah.
and I can tell you right now, they're not around here. Because they put fireplace boxes in my development over egress windows. So unless you're 100 pounds, you're not getting out of that egress window. And when I called the township about it, you know, but the inspector passed it, so don't even get me started on that, but I do not trust any building inspector in
I'm a
this.
builder, you're
Not,
gonna
not.
tell me that.
I would agree with you.
They did make them rip them off. Happy about that, but that's just one example of something that you should never miss in inspecting building.
Well, you've probably seen, back in my college days when I had my own construction company, anybody could swing a hammer out of a job, residential development back in those days.
Now it's
So,
worse.
what's that?
It's worse now.
Well,
Now you have inferior materials.
yeah,
too.
well, we had a inspector came up to the house, and he doesn't even walk into the house. And he goes, "Hey, Bill, hey, buddy, get you down at Victor," that kind of thing. He takes the permit, smacks it on the door, walked away. And we're sitting there going, for me, it's fine. We just move on, finish up the job, we're done. But I'm saying, I'm a homeowner. I don't want that to happen to my house, And in that case, they were adding like a $20,000 addition to the kitchen and stuff, And that's the kind of, but to Melissa's point, it's like, trying to find the qualified people for large positions. You see, fortunately for Huntington Township, we have not had the type of situations where you got a supervisor or manager goes off to jail for various reasons. And, we do have people who have, serve the community, but I think some of you know of some of the situations I'm talking about and happen in Chester County.
It's a hell of a quote-unquote scam. So you're paying, these guys are getting paid and they're not doing their job. And unfortunately, they like to bust the homeowner's butt when their shed's a half-inch over that line or a fence issue, but then they're taking paybacks and they're building houses and developments that are wrong.
My development, what we did around 2004, 2005, whatever it was, we had met with the township manager in my house, and all the people in my development were in my house. So we had about 40-some people standing room only, but what we did is we spoke to him in a calm, way, came up with a punch list of what had to be done, and to the township manager's credit, one of the things he did was to ensure that we had trees planted on our property, because somehow that got slipped off the final plan, but he went back to the developer and said, "You're going to put those trees in for them," and to complete the punch list of all the things that we were waiting for.
That's trees underneath the utility line. And then 20 years later down the road, you gotta hack them to death like they did my poor old main tree. I cried when that thing went down.
We had, I think we're going to get focused on a few things here.
Do you ever review the consultants that the township has and put out maybe an RFP for other consultants to use?
I requested that we do a 3-year review.
So have we ever done that? Because we've had Technicon for how long?
There's never been. One of the things that happened for the first time in the past 12 years, we had performance reviews for the employees. In the past,
But I'm talking about consultants, why do we not review other consultants? Why do we not do that?
the warranty's not approved it.
Why not?
Well, I brought it up.
It needs to happen.
Keep everybody honest.
It's on the YouTube video.
It needs to happen. I read that down.
Getting back to some of the items we first brought up, so we'll start winding down. Anybody on the Zoom, have you heard anything that you want to comment on?
Kevin Wyden was trying to get on, but he was waiting for somebody to let him in. I don't know if he got in or not.
Kevin is
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, I was able to find it until you called.
Okay.
All right, Ben. You hear pretty well what's going on?
Yeah, I've been following for about the last 20 minutes, thank you.
Okay, good. All right, winding things out. So we have, there was a follow-up on the website, so we'll see something within the next month. And I welcome your comment because one of the things that we'd like to know, if you get to this website, and even though this is just a layout at this point, we can navigate it easily and obtain the information that you need to get to. It's one thing to fill a website with all this information, but if you don't need it, we need to be sure you can get to it, like meeting times and agendas and all that kind of stuff, and properly post it. And then the one thing that we haven't done very well in the past is the content management piece of it. You post something there, it's good for a week, it sits on the website for 2 years.
But I also think using the township Facebook page is
Yeah.
helpful too.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we posted about Happy Valentine's Day, but I didn't see anything about the town hall meeting.
Yeah.
I saw a post on Facebook about town.
That wasn't on the township
No, it's on
Yeah.
Pine Brook residents page.
And I saw it
It
too.
wasn't on the township page.
I've been doing it for years with my webpage, or my Facebook page. I put the notes of the meetings up there, and then some people will copy it down to their page. So the vote by the board, we have been providing some explanation on some of the engineering issues, or for instance, when we're talking about the parks and recreation and things like that. Christie may provide us with information if we don't have someone from the committee available, and same thing with land preservation. I sometimes fill that in because I've been to some of those meetings. But from what I heard tonight, it's still not enough.
It's good to say, I'd like to propose a vote for it for this reason, that's all.
Committee recommendations. So when the land preservation, parks, planning and such, when they make a recommendation to the board of supervisors that we should be accepting those and supporting those recommendations, what I heard.
We're explaining why you're not. The planning commission said clearly, representative from the commission said they clearly did not support a vote of no position, then why were you still voting no position?
Right, the board responds to questions. I think there are times when a board member does not have the answer, so we do try to pull that information from, someone that's one of the third parties, the engineer, the solicitor, but
I mean, I don't know, I really, to be honest, I don't know. That's fine, he's acknowledging that, and we don't know.
Yeah, but I'm just going off of that one example, based on Mike's recommendation from Technicon. I thought it didn't make sense in light of the information that Melissa gave that you would vote no position. I mean, I'm not the expert in planning,
yeah.
but I thought what she said made total sense. So it was counterintuitive why you guys voted the way you did on that one.
And to the point when residents bring up some points, we should be acknowledging them and saying, that's something we will add to our list of action items. We do have a section in the agenda called old business. So when I first started on the board, there was no line for old business. So I added it to the agenda. The only problem is it was never populated with anything. So the idea is that if we don't resolve something that month, the next month it shows on there, and then it shows closure or it's still open. So that, if it's sitting there for 6 months, that kind of gives people a heads up that, somebody needs to bring attention to that item.
So my development came in like about a year and a half ago and said that they were opposed to the trail getting put in behind their homes. And then all of a sudden they got a notice that the trail was going in, and my HOA president said, but we told you we didn't want it, and he was told, well, you never said that. So, there has to be a way of keeping track of this when, residents give you feedback and say, you clearly don't want this, that it gets documented somehow, and that you can't go, obviously it's documented on video, but apparently that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So,
I thought the trail was moved because of that. I thought that's what happened, the trail was moved because of the residents' comments in your development.
I remember the residents coming in here and several meetings about it, so it's gotta be somewhere.
Yeah, I remember it too, but I thought the trail moved, and I actually went to a couple of homes to take a look at where the proposed
but
trail was.
I don't think that was communicated, that, hey, we heard your concerns, and so therefore we moved it back.
We did.
So, that, to the best of my knowledge, they didn't hear that, so.
Yeah.
Brandon, like Conservancy actually did a study and they gave a report to the board about it.
Well,
Yeah,
also
Travis
remember that
found
was a different manager at the time too. who was not very well in communication with the residents, so that could be a problem there.
Yeah, we did go to the trail, we went out and looked at
They
it.
actually did not look at the data study.
They had a study.
Data study, and then they gave, and I believe the Brandywine Conservancy had someone from the Brook HOA, whatever they're offering.
So we did respond to it, it's not like we just said.
We conducted a Brandywine Conservancy bid study.
Do we have a point of contact for the HOA that we noted we've been reaching out to, or?
We have their address on file, I believe we have residence information.
Do you get updates from the president of the HOA? Taxes?
If I could add.
Yes, go ahead.
conversation.
Go ahead.
This is Ken. The Brandywine Conservancy was involved, and there were discussions that were carried out, and at least what I recall, the feedback from the developer was that, if they were looking to moving the trail, there would be a cost associated with it that they weren't willing to absorb. And the gal from the Brandywine Conservancy, I believe she met with Mr. Goldman and had that conversation relative to, an option, several options that were available. And I can go back to my notes, but it included either building a tree buffer based, between where the trail was planned and the property of the homeowners association and the properties, or consideration to move it, but it would be at a cost of the homeowners association. I can go back to my notes and look at it. I don't know what communications occurred after that to the point of Val and others, but I do recall having notes from the Conservancy based on those conversations that occurred.
Yeah, because I know now what's happened is there were a lot of trees, I think, that died from a lot of the blasting and things that were going on. So a lot of the trees have now had to be taken down, and a lot of the homeowners in Foxbrook are having a total loss of privacy, and now they're having to pay to put trees in, evergreen trees in, to get some sort of privacy. I mean, their dogs are going nuts, people walking back there all the time. It's impacted on our development a lot. And now the township's looking at taking some of our open space away. It's like Foxbrook is under fire right now, for whatever reason, but.
All right, we're looking at the tax money spent frugally, is my words. The one good thing I would say over the years, we've managed the budget properly in that we do have things like an operation reserve fund or like a rainy day fund. I bring that up because there was a situation over in West Brandywine with the bridge, the Icedale Bridge, and I attended that meeting. And when I spoke to how we do it in Hunterbrook Township, that's when their residents say, how come we're not doing it in West Brandywine? Part of the reason I guess we can say that, we were able to keep taxes down and all that because it was a break we had from the residential development. But a lot of that's changing now. We raised taxes for the first time, and that was with the fire and EMS tax. So that increased the property taxes. And but as far as the spending of your taxes for other things, we did run into a problem with money being pulled from the land preservation account into the Parks and Recreation. And the approval and the recommendation from the land preservation was, well, I'll start first. The Land and Preservation Committees accepted $400,000 transfer, but then there was another 400 and then another 400. And, that went way beyond what the committee had recommended and beyond what I was expecting to hear, to pull $1.2 million for that park. And then sitting here in the meeting and having listened to our township manager over the year, trying to narrow it down to the cost of that upgrade, and I said it was between $2 and $3 million, and then he corrected me and said, no, it's more like $5 million, and that was way beyond, what we anticipated. So to your point that we have to keep on top of the tax, it can't be,
But if you're taking like land preservation money and using it to build a park in Foxborough HOA land, you're taking open space and building on it. That's not preserving land. You know, that's building on land. That's not preserving it.
yeah. In the case of Elm Park, I think the purchase price was around $400,000, and then 25 years later, we're talking about spending $5 million on an upgrade. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. All right.
Okay,
Question? Yes.
real quick. Looking at past history
Yep.
and going forth, how can we use wisdom then, if we already know that, Calvin was here, our sheriff, and he said it would take $750,000 to get 10 to 12 police officers. How much of that rainy day fund could be used towards getting a police officer, a police car?
Or a joint task force with the borough.
I'm sorry, what did you say, $750,000?
When he was
For
here,
12 officers?
he gave,
Startup
ballpark.
Startup cost
He just gave us a
for
ballpark.
the police department, but the numbers that he provided, he didn't have, that was his opinion, which we know of.
And why is he saying that officer?
What you need is 10 officers within that ballpark.
No, I'm saying just
But
one or two.
regardless of what those
No?
numbers are, yeah. go
We do
ahead.
not have enough in a rainy day fund for maybe 1 or 2 extra officers in the park?
We, as I said, it's up there on our vision statement, and, are we going to readdress that? Because we disbanded our police department in 2005, and,
For good reason.
Right, yes.
yes, we know that.
It was a good reason.
Yeah.
Well, you could have just started over.
Well, in the, I think it was in the comp plan, it said, a recommendation that within 3 years, to address law enforcement again. And from what I understand, the reason for that is they said a cooling off, because if we came back a year later, then we would be required to reconsider some of the officers that formerly worked for us. So 3 years was 2008.
But you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean,
Yeah.
that's essentially what happened.
Yeah.
You get rid of the officers that there was an issue with, and you just hire new ones. You don't
Yeah.
get rid of the whole police department.
But we still have, that 2014 report from the state. That was, we could have used for a baseline. The numbers, of course, are outdated at this point, but it gave projections based on, averages across the state, 25 square mile municipality, the amount of crime, the density of population, all those factors, and they gave us some numbers to work with. So when I had conducted these town hall meetings back in those days, we just, I just kept saying, we're looking into it. Finally, I said, we can't just keep saying we're looking into it. So we did have a task force with the borough and with West Brandywine. Okay? And that was stopped abruptly. We haven't looked at it since. But with the point that Officer Wilson was saying, Chief Wilson, is that the amount of traffic that's going to be on 322 is going to have an impact on them.
They're going to start charging us. I mean, that's plain and simple.
Well, either that or the state might end up charging us, but lately we're hearing that the one police officer, state trooper, doing a great job, but you can't, one person for 25 square miles, and I don't know if he's still sharing responsibility for other municipalities as well.
Well, now the state made it so that after 10 o'clock, 2 people have to be in the car together.
Yeah.
So if there's 4 people on duty, you only have two units out anywhere.
Yeah. To answer your question, law enforcement, I mean, that's something we can, put on the discussion for 2023, and then when we address the budget for 2024, the decision has to be made. Do we want to engage with, what path, what direction do we want to go to? And it's not just what we think we need, it's what we can afford.
I guess, John, my question is what is the punch list of the community that's of significant importance? And then what is the punch list of the township board of supervisors? Are they matching up? I guess that's probably my biggest question.
I think over the years, my experience with board of supervisors, we've been reactive in many ways. To part-time job and full-time responsibility, and I feel it was very helpful for me over the past 12 years to work with other municipalities through my COG. And it's my COG because I'm the founding member of that COG, and to have gone to PSATS conferences, KO conferences, and so forth, that has helped me understand what's best practices. And the only thing is, we have to apply them in this municipality. If you look at the Westchester County COG, we've accomplished some good things, but when I go through the list, Huntingburg Township has not adopted any of these projects. And to give you an idea of the projects we're talking about, you drive down 322, you see all those veteran banners. That came out of the fact that I spoke to Rich Florio, and he started attending the COG, got the borough on board. They mentioned one time this interest in this project, and we had Charles Palmer from Ackland said, "We've already done that. Just come to us, here, this is how you get it done." Boom, it was a no-brainer. Those are the kind of things where it's just reach across the border, and we can get good understanding of cost, delivery, and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the things that we really need to focus on as a board. We have good qualified people, but sometimes your business experience is within business, not within government, and it's a different ballgame.
But I do think that the community is coming to support the board. So I don't want you to feel as though, I want your punch list to be similar to my punch list.
Yeah.
But I also do want to come to meetings and not have an understanding of what your punch list is.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I realize that you guys are covering a wide area of
We have a thing,
issues.
to your point, we have a thing in software development. We have a list called a backlog, and every 2 weeks we do a grooming or refinement. We look at all the work that has to be done and say, this is our priority. These are the top 5 things we got to do in the next 2 weeks. And I think that's a similar process that we could be doing at the workshop meetings. We have that list of things targeted for 2023. What's the important things that got to get done? What are the things that could get done, and the things that we're just not going to get to? And then that's communicated to the community saying,
That'd be
it's a
great.
good idea, but we just don't have the money or the time to get to it this year. But keep at it and add it to the next year's list.
That would be great.
Yeah.
And then the community would know to be patient, or how we can serve you better.
And again, I thank the committee people who are doing the heavy lifting for a lot of this stuff. Take a look at the list again. I think we got the variance to the law enforcement, and we just said. So Tracy, as far as talking to the borough, do you think we should be reaching out to them or have them reach out? Well, what's your take on that?
Are you talking about policing?
If we want to talk to them, or if we just say that this is not the time to be talking, we got to.
I would recommend deliberating in the
Yeah.
board of supervisors meeting, either the next workshop or the next board meeting.
All right, so we'll just say, budget. Take a look at projected to actuals.
Yeah, well, my big thing is, so like there's 200,000 or 250,000 and then 17 spent. Can we show where that 180 or better,
Yeah.
did it just go through into the rest of the budget? Because the numbers come out the same at the bottom. I think that might well be spent on road improvements or stormwater management.
We have a firm, Peter Barnes, I forget the long name of, but I spoke to one person in his office one time, and what I was looking for, asking him, was to have like in Excel, you can do these charts and graphs, and then you have like, here's your general fund, this is what's been consumed for the year, this is the remaining amount, and then you also show if anything is carried over. into the next year, where anything previously was carried over. It's very simple in Excel to do something like that.
Or if it was used for something else.
Right, yeah, or, yeah. So then this shrunk down a bit. It's no longer 100,000, it's now 80,000.
Well, I mean, that whole budget needs to be reworked because
Yeah.
there's all these miscellaneous things sort of listed in nebulous categories. You have no idea what they're talking about.
If you see the budget right now, you do have the chart of accounts, so like, 400, 401, and things like in that range of like salary for staff, and it's all broken down into, and that's coming from the state. The state has provided that outline for us. We only started using that about 10 years ago. So
Look at East Brandywine, I
Yes.
swear to you. It was like the Cadillac version.
Scott Pearsall set that up, and he did the
Yeah.
presentation at PSATs
Yeah.
on that one. Yeah.
It's what we should strive to be doing.
Yeah. I mean, I did copy a couple of things from Scott. And, yeah.
Snow removal?
So, yeah, we're gonna have supplies, and we're gonna have money. I didn't jinx it. April's still coming. So, as we say right now, that's a healthy account, carried over to 2024. Haven't accepted 2023 yet. Okay, cost of personnel increase. So, we have to provide anytime that we have increases like that. It's when we discussed this a few years ago, I was asking for a strata, saying like you have an administrator, a senior administrator, and stuff like that, so that when that person gets to that amount of money, they're accepting more responsibility in order to get that increase. We never set that up. That's something that, so if you're giving additional money, what's the additional receipt for that compensation?
And the other thing that they said, I think for anyone, is for each person's salary, indicate clearly on their website what their salary is and what percentage above or below the mean that salary is for that similar type of job.
Yeah.
So you know, okay, are we giving a competitive salary? Are we like knocking it out of the park and it's insane?
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about transparency.
Well, collecting data and stuff, there's a thing called reliability and validity. So reliability means the numbers fall into place, but validity is accomplishing what it's supposed to. And I think that's a distinction there. Let's take a look at the next page. We have variances, notices. Margie?
Oh, yes. I was just concerned, what responsibility does the township have to make sure residents or homeowners are compliant with their property lines? Is there a citation or a penalty? Is it reviewed? I just don't like to see people in a situation where they go to sell their home, or there's an incident, that they may not be covered by insurance, or there's additional costs, or there's complications. What responsibility does the township take to notify residents, or are there guidelines online?
Well, I know
So you're
there's some.
talking about two neighbors or one encroaches on the other one's property line?
Well, it's using common ground, like with open space behind their lot. And if there's a building or a garden or whatever they're doing, using, what complication is there for that person? Especially when they go to sell their home. Or
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I know there's times when, before I came to Honeybrook, I know there's fence lines and stuff, a person goes in, installs a fence, and then the neighbor comes along and says, you're 5 inches over my line.
Yeah.
Yeah, on my property.
Yeah.
I think that's between the two neighbors. I don't know if the township has any more than that.
Well,
I know.
yeah, that's
So I'm not aware.
I don't know if the township gets
If you
involved.
use a fence permit, then
Yeah.
the township has some type of
Yeah.
liability there.
It
But
should
the
be-
township should only be approving based on the plot plan that the person submitted.
Yeah.
So if the person submitting a faulty plot plan, then that's on them.
Yeah.
That's also on the fence guy too, he's supposed to check all that stuff out. before he puts the fence in.
Glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Because my neighbors don't mow their yard.
Well, back in my college days, one of the things I did was I worked for Sears, and we installed fences, Sears with the chain link, they're famous for that. And that was part of the process. We'd have to say, can we see your land survey? So that we send our contractor out, he needed interrupted in the middle of the job, and we would lose a day's work.
So there isn't any role in township in there?
I don't know for town or township. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there is, they're going for a permit.
Well, yeah, but we just said for the, like the fences.
Yeah, but they
There's-
require this.
Can't put a fence up without a permit.
Correct.
We don't have.
Yeah.
We don't have
Yeah.
fence permits in the township.
Oh, you don't?
No, we don't.
Okay, we get to the EAC, and, I've been looking at this for a few months. It was good information. We Conserve PA, they explained exactly how it was authorized back in 1972, and some municipalities have used it as, having people who either have an interest and the expertise to provide guidance for the municipality on some of the environmental issues. And what we've heard in the last few years with some of the requirements for stormwater and all these other things, sometimes you have board members coming on for the first time and they're not aware of a lot of those environmental issues. And we should have, a library of topics, not talking about volumes of books, but, like a website to point to and say, here's a summary of, your, what's needed for the 537 plan and all those different things. Because we throw around those numbers and you sit there and go, what is that? And I know there's times when I will say, is it 529 and 537? So I see value in an EAC. My approach would be to customize it, shape it for the needs of Huntingburg Township. We don't have to model what other municipalities have done, because in most cases, we're not doing what other municipalities are doing. Our priorities are different, but that's up to our board to say, let's finish the ordinance or just drop it.
Can I just ask Tracy, why are you so against the EAC?
I think that it's possible that the ordinance as written doesn't make sense correctly right now.
It wasn't finalized. That was a draft. It was presented as a draft. So if you're saying that you were ready to approve a draft, you're going to have to go to the solicitor in order for her to, say that you're missing certain vital elements. This was an attempt to put a draft out there and work from, and set the parameters. How many members, length of term, and all that. So that's the next
I mean,
step.
it just seems like every time you bring that up, it's like, you're like, against. I mean, we all care about our environment, and it just seems like, and in township, people are like, wow, there's somebody on the board that doesn't care about their own environment?
Well, one of the things that was lacking on
I think you're taking it the wrong way. I never said I don't care about the environment. I also care about the township and I care about the residents. And I want to make sure that if we do put a new board in, that it's done without anyone getting a paid position out of it, or it's done in a way that makes sense.
And the part that says the paid position, in that April ordinance that we're talking about, adopting the Chester County Climate Action Plan, it said in our resolution, and/or consultant. So I threw that in there because it may be tough to get the talent to have somebody come in and help us, and that could be a paid position or it could be strictly volunteer. But then again, that was just thrown out there in the draft.
I don't think there's a lot of residents in the township that have professional expertise
Yeah.
in some of those environmental areas like Adam.
And there's another
You
gentleman.
may not need.
Yeah, there's one gentleman who said he's
What's the
retired.
projected resources needed for this?
Well, it depends on what's the goal of accomplishing this. And
Well, I guess that's kind of what and I'm not against environmental. What I'm against is what I've seen in the past, that if you don't have a clear direction and everybody's kind of throwing, oh, I'm about the water, or I'm about this wetland because of this building, I'm about this. Well, then all of a sudden it becomes like a bitch committee, if you will. And it starts tying up resources because now we have all these concerns and you will have people that are qualified within the community. They'll come together and then they will start, I need this, or you should have this, you should, so that, and that's going to in turn get you into legal issues and consulting issues. So now you're recreating, potentially recreating resources, water management issues, EPA, and you're kind of redeveloping a redeveloped system. So not that, speak for myself anyway, not that I'm against environmental, I'm against a
careless,
not direct vision direction for a specific goal that's intended on this process or this specific situation. Because when we open it up and say we're going to have this committee, have at it. You're going to have 10,000 different items and the money's going to be going flying. And that's not even talking about the pay position. That's the legal that's going to potentially go against the township, and then also the consulting behind it.
when we formed our land preservation committee, none of us had any experience in, land issues. We had an education series in place, so we had the benefit of Brandywine Conservancy and other organizations coming in. We had bankers come in and talk about bond issues. So it was a gradual process. So you could see within a short period of time, all these volunteers on the Land Preservation Committee got up to a level where there was a alliance so that when they made a recommendation to purchase a conservation easement, the Board of Supervisors had a level of confidence that was coming from a reliable source.
Which is a great, and that's my specific, is that was based on land preservation. So is this environmental committee based on land preservation, period?
Yeah.
Is this based on drinking water? Is this based on air quality? Is this based on what's getting washed away from the farms? Is this the greenness of the grass? Is this the traffic and the noise pollution? What is this? Because it's going to get, I guarantee it, mark my words, if you open it up and you committee it, it's going to be a money waster. And before you know it, you're going to be running around in a circle. Not only will you be running around in a circle, you're going to be spending a bunch of money. And then that's going to lead to interior fighting.
Well, as I said,
Have a specific vision with a specific goal, with specific needed resources. Come to the people and say, this is what we want, this is how we're going to do it, this is why we're going to do it, then I think you have something. But just saying an environmental committee.
the board would not have authority to spend or do anything like that. The way the draft was written, it was under the direction of the Board of Supervisors to say, advise us on this particular issue. This is something that we have a concern. We don't have enough information to move forward on this, and charge them and say, could you do the legwork, reach out to Land Trust, Brandywine Conservancy, something like that, because you've got, as far as the supervisors are concerned, we're doing that right now ourselves, and I don't know.
But the planning commission makes recommendations, and other boards make recommendations, and you don't do that, then what's the point of another committee?
Well, that's what I said, give explanation.
What part of the planning commission that I did not abide by?
I'm not talking about you, but I am talking about the zoning hearing board for Brandywine Terrace, encroaching, I'm just, there's so many things that the board has gone against that the planning commission has either recommended or not recommended. So this is just, to me, another committee that is just.
Well, then I'll just stay up late till 2 o'clock at night and dig up the statistics that would satisfy me that there is information out there. Because right now, I don't see that information. I'm doubting Thomas and saying, I don't rely on somebody just saying, it looks pretty good, go ahead. With time, once the project's approved, then down the line, we'll have all those things fall into place. I just said at this point in time, we should be able to gather some of that information mean, it's out there, it's already out there. It's just a matter of pulling that information together, put together in a report, and it will be helpful. Can we get by without the AC? Yeah. It's not critical, it's not important. It's advisory, that's all. And as you heard tonight, all the different things that are coming to the board these days, it always helps to get to get the information to make the proper choices. We're not going to make all the right choices, but hopefully we're working from facts and not from opinion. So I'm glad you brought up that point, because, yes, I don't want something to run amok. You know, I don't want to have to discipline or turn around and say, this board's useless, let's fire all of them, and they may not be too happy to hear that.
I just think if it's, like I said, I don't know that it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
I just think if it's specific,
Yeah.
and there's an outline of resources and what we're after and what we're gonna do, and we have that zeroed in, so you don't have miscellaneous people just coming in, well, what about this, and what about that, and what about this, and then it's just gonna spin.
Yeah, well, she come back to the board, and we'll say,
Yes.
that's the point. Yeah, well, then we come back and say, look, you heard some of the residents speaking, this is something that, let's have this group take a look at it and get back to us next month,
But you also gotta keep in mind too, there's only 3 that, just like the lady behind me was speaking of, you're gonna keep parlaying, and keep putting more and more stuff when you got a book that you're not gonna get to, that is gonna make it ineffective. You're gonna become effective because you got a lot of red tape.
Okay. All right, let's see. Also, question came up on the vehicle use. I'm just going to walk through this quickly. If you don't have any follow-up on this, I'll just move through it. Newsletter schedule. I mean, that's something that we can say April, November, you get a newsletter, or within that time frame. But yeah, so we just talked about the timetable, the time frame for the website. The vendor we're looking at is Civic Plus, and we're optimistic that mid-March you'll be seeing a new website. Finally, I think we're looking at what a lot of people are talking about. The D.R. Horton project, there's a lot going on with that. And it's going to be a lot more coming up as time goes on. There are plans to us to go through the planning commission, and the last meeting, I think it was the workshop, it didn't seem like they were prepared coming in again.
But we need to make sure we're prepared to know what the impact is going to be on our community, and we try and put some of that burden on them.
Yep.
Don't put it on the residents. We didn't ask for this. We can't afford to take on that financial impact to cover the infrastructure upgrade.
Yeah. I think that covers where you have the caption.
Vendors.
Oh, vendors, yeah. Yeah, so vendor review. Right. We can bring it up again and set a goal. I can take a look at some of the other municipalities with their review times. It's getting late, it's 9 o'clock. I appreciate everyone for joining. Thank you for your time, and please hang in there and keep raising your voices and let us know what you need to get done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.